The massive council chamber stretched out like a cathedral of glass and metal, filled with beings from hundreds of different worlds. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some walked on legs, others floated in containment fields. But they all shared one thing. They all believed they were superior to the humans standing at the far platform. Kyle Morrison adjusted his uniform collar and tried to keep his face calm. He had been Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 8 years now, and he had learned to hide his frustration well. Beside him stood Lisa Hayes, a decorated commander who controlled Earth's defense fleet. Her fingers drummed silently against her thigh, the only sign of her impatience. The council chamber's central platform held High Counselor Zexthar, a being made of living crystal that reflected light in rainbow patterns. His voice came through the translation devices everyone wore, turning his alien sounds into perfect English. The human petition for equal military rights is denied, Zexthar announced, his tone suggesting the matter was trivial. Your species lacks the maturity for such authority. Kyle had expected this. They always said no. For 70 years, Earth had followed every rule the Council made. Humans paid enormous taxes to the Council. They sent their ships to protect Council worlds. They mediated disputes between alien races. They built defense stations and trained peacekeepers, and still the Council treated them like children. We have protected 17 Council worlds in the last 10 years, Kyle said, keeping his voice steady. We ask only for the same rights you give to species who do far less. A Peltharian delegate rose from his seat, his scales glittering under the chamber lights. His species looked like upright lizards with too many eyes. Your kind is too aggressive, he said through his translator. Too violent. You haven't earned these privileges. Lisa leaned close to Kyle and whispered, They didn't think we were too violent when raiders attacked their mining colonies last year. We lost 30 good people defending their assets. Kyle nodded slightly. He remembered. He remembered all of it, every time humans had bled for the Council, every time they had been dismissed or insulted afterward. We respectfully request a vote, Kyle said formally. The voting display lit up across the chamber. Each Council member's decision showed as a colored light. Green meant yes, red meant no. Kyle watched as red lights filled the display one after another. A few yellow abstentions appeared, but not a single green light showed support for Earth. The final tally appeared. Denied, 412 to 0. Kyle took a slow breath. Back on Earth, President Daniel Carter was waiting for his signal. They had discussed this possibility many times. The human leadership had made a decision months ago. If the Council rejected this petition, humanity would activate a protocol that had been prepared in secret. Kyle touched the communicator in his collar. Command, this is Morrison. Execute Directive 773. Lisa's own communicator buzzed with confirmation codes. She began typing commands into her wrist device, sending encrypted messages to every human ship in Council space. Zexthar's crystalline form flickered with confusion. What is the meaning of this communication? We're leaving, Kyle said simply. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. The chamber exploded with noise. Alien voices rose in dozens of languages, creating chaos in the translation systems. Some delegates laughed, thinking it was a bluff. Others looked uncertain. You cannot simply leave, Zexthar said. There are treaties, obligations, which we have fulfilled faithfully for 70 years, Kyle replied. But those treaties require mutual respect and equal rights. Since the Council refuses to provide either, we consider the agreements void. A Vexorian delegate, floating in a sphere of glowing gas, spoke up. This is childish. You cannot survive without the Council's protection and trade networks. Kyle smiled, though there was no warmth in it. We'll manage. Humanity survived for thousands of years before we met you. We'll survive just fine after we leave. Lisa's wrist device chimed. She glanced at it and nodded to Kyle. All fleets report ready. Withdrawal operations beginning now. Across the galaxy, human vessels received their orders. On the Peltharian border, Captain Jake Morrison commanded a defense station that protected 3 mining colonies. He read the withdrawal order twice to make sure he understood it correctly. All personnel begin evacuation procedures, he announced over the station intercom. Strip all human technology. Take everything that isn't nailed down and take the nails too. We leave nothing behind. His crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had run evacuation drills before, though no one had expected to actually use them. Within hours, the first transport ships were being loaded with equipment, weapons, and supplies. The Peltharian governor of the nearest colony, a being named Rixtal, rushed to the station in a small shuttle. He arrived just as Jake was overseeing the removal of the station's main defense computer. "You cannot do this," Rixtal said, his 4 eyes wide with panic. "Raiders will attack within weeks. We have no military of our own." "Then I suggest you ask the Council for protection," Jake said, directing 2 soldiers to carry the computer core to the transport bay. "We're not your personal army anymore. But we have treaties. Had treaties. Past tense. Your council just voted to deny us equal rights while expecting us to die for you. We're done." Similar scenes played out on 100 worlds. On Kethrin Station, human peacekeepers packed their equipment while merchants begged them to stay. The humans had kept order in the busy trade hub for decades. Without them, old disputes would flare into violence again. On the Vexorian science colony, human engineers removed the defense grids they had installed and maintained for 30 years. The Vexorian scientists watched helplessly, realizing their research facility would be defenseless against pirates. Back in the council chamber, Kyle and Lisa prepared to leave. Zexthar tried to block their path with a containment field, but Lisa calmly pulled out a small device and deactivated it. Human technology was often more advanced than the council wanted to admit. "You will regret this," Zexthar said, his voice carrying a threat. "I doubt it," Kyle replied. "But you might. You've taken us for granted for 70 years. You're about to learn what happens when we're not around to solve your problems." They walked out of the chamber together, leaving shocked silence behind them. Outside, a human shuttle waited to take them to the nearest Earth vessel. As they lifted off from the council station, Kyle looked back at the massive structure that represented galactic civilization. "Do you think they'll realize what they've lost?" Lisa asked. "Eventually," Kyle said. "But by then it will be too late." The withdrawal had begun. Humanity was going home, and they were taking 70 years of peacekeeping, protection, and stability with them. Commander Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the USS Vigilance, watching the tactical display that showed human positions across the entire galaxy. Each blue dot represented a ship, station, or military installation. There were thousands of them, spread across council space like a protective net. All stations reporting in, Lieutenant Greg Palmer announced from his console. "We have confirmation from every human position. Kethrin border posts, Solix trade routes, Mazar neutral zones, Peltharian defense grids. Everyone received the withdrawal order." "Begin the pullback," Lisa ordered. "All ships return to Sol system. Standard evacuation protocols. Leave nothing that could be used or copied." Her orders went out through encrypted channels. Across the galaxy, human commanders began the largest coordinated movement in their military history. Ships powered up their engines. Stations began evacuation procedures. Diplomats packed their files. On the view screen, Lisa watched as the first wave of ships broke orbit from their assigned positions. They moved in perfect formation, a testament to decades of training and discipline. Each vessel had been protecting council space, often at great cost. Now they were coming home. "Communications from the Peltharian government," Greg reported. "They're demanding we honor our defense agreements." "Tell them to read the withdrawal notice," Lisa said. "We honored those agreements for 30 years. They ended when the council voted against us." Colonel Jake Morrison oversaw the evacuation of Firebase Delta, the largest human installation on Peltharian territory. His soldiers moved through the base systematically, removing everything of value: weapons, computers, medical supplies, even the solar panels that powered the facility. If humans built it, humans would take it. Governor Rixtal arrived with an entourage of Peltharian officials. They watched in dismay as another transport lifted off, carrying the base's shield generators. "This is madness," Rixtal said, his scales flushing with distress colors. "The raider clans will see we're undefended. They'll attack within days." Jake directed 2 engineers to disconnect the base's communication array. "Then you should have thought about that before your council representatives voted against us." "I personally supported your petition," Rixtal protested. "That's nice. But you're not the council. Your government chose to restrict our rights while expecting our service. Well, service ended today, but the civilians, the mining colonies, the trade stations, they'll be massacred." Jake felt a flicker of sympathy. He had trained with Peltharian soldiers. Some of them were decent people, but orders were orders, and those orders came from the very top. My advice? Start building your own defense force, or hire mercenaries, or ask the council for protection. But don't ask us. We're going home. The last transport lifted off 3 hours later. Jake stood on the boarding ramp and looked back at Firebase Delta. It had been his home for 5 years. Good people had died defending this sector. Now it stood empty, stripped of everything useful. Burn it, he ordered. Demolition charges detonated in sequence, collapsing the main buildings. The base's power core was removed, but everything else was destroyed to prevent scavengers from taking shelter in the ruins. The message was clear. Humanity left nothing behind. On Kethrin Station, the situation was different but equally chaotic. The station was a massive trade hub where dozens of species exchanged goods. Human peacekeepers had maintained order there for 40 years. They settled disputes, prevented theft, and stopped the occasional fight from turning into a riot. Captain Sophie Grant commanded the human peacekeeping force. She stood in the station's central plaza, watching as the last of her troops boarded transports. Around her, alien merchants argued and pushed, already starting to fight now that humans weren't there to stop them. A Kethrin merchant, a being who looked like a cross between an octopus and a bird, grabbed Sophie's arm with one tentacle. "Please, you must stay," the merchant pleaded. "Without human peacekeepers, there will be chaos. The Vexorians and my people already have disputes. The Mazar merchants refuse to pay their dock fees. Everything will fall apart." Sophie gently removed the tentacle from her arm. "Then I suggest you form your own security force. Work together, compromise, figure it out. But we've relied on you for so long." "Exactly. You relied on us. You never built your own systems because we did it for you. Now you'll have to learn." She boarded the last transport and the doors sealed behind her. Through the window, she watched as two groups of merchants immediately started shoving each other. A fight broke out near the docking ports. The station's automated systems tried to restore order, but they weren't designed for this level of chaos. The transport pulled away from the station. Sophie felt a pang of guilt, but she pushed it aside. Humanity had given enough. The galaxy needed to learn to take care of itself. On the Vexorian science colony, the withdrawal was more technical but equally devastating. Dr. Helen Price led a team of human engineers who had built and maintained the colony's defense grid. The grid protected the scientists from raiders and cosmic radiation. Without it, the colony couldn't function. The Vexorian head scientist, a gaseous being named Trelvar, followed Helen as she supervised the removal of the grid's central processors. "You built this system," Trelvar said through his translator. "You cannot simply take it away. Our research will be lost. Years of work, irreplaceable data." "We offered to train your people to maintain it," Helen replied, directing her team to remove another component. "You said it wasn't necessary. You said humans would always be here to handle it. We didn't mean literally forever." "Well, forever ended today. You've got basic shields that will last maybe 6 months. After that, you'll need to either build your own system or evacuate. But we don't have the expertise." Helen stopped and looked at Trelvar directly. "Then you should have let us train your people. Or you should have convinced your council representatives to treat us with respect. You had 70 years to figure this out." She climbed aboard the transport, leaving Trelvar floating in the empty power station. The last components of the defense grid went with her. The Vexorians would have to solve their own problems now. Back on Earth, President Daniel Carter sat in the Oval Office, reading reports from across the galaxy. Secretary of Defense Karen Phillips stood beside him, updating him on the withdrawal's progress. 90% of our people are en route home," Karen said. "The remaining 10% should be evacuated within 48 hours. We've recovered or destroyed all critical technology. Nothing useful was left behind." "Casualties?" Daniel asked. "None so far. A few minor injuries during the rapid evacuations, but nothing serious. The Council hasn't tried to stop us by force." "They're still in shock," Daniel said. "They didn't believe we'd actually leave. They thought it was a negotiating tactic. We're getting communication requests from dozens of Council worlds. They're offering deals, better trade terms, direct negotiations outside Council authority. Some are even offering tribute." Daniel shook his head. "Refuse them all. We're not negotiating with individual members while they're still part of the Council. They made their choice. Let them live with it." The Council itself has sent 6 requests for diplomatic talks, Karen continued. They're offering concessions. Limited voting rights, reduced tribute, recognition of our military actions. The same things they should have offered years ago, Daniel said. Tell them we'll reconsider our position in 5 years. Not before. 5 years is a long time, sir. A lot can happen. Good, let it happen. The galaxy needs to learn that peace isn't free. It requires work and respect. They took our work for granted and withheld respect. Let them figure out how to maintain peace on their own. Commander Lisa Hayes watched the tactical display as more human ships entered Sol's system. They came from every direction, a fleet returning home after decades of service. It was a proud moment, but also a sad one. Many good people had died protecting Council space. Do you think we did the right thing? Greg Palmer asked quietly. Lisa considered the question. We gave them 70 years. We asked for nothing except equal treatment. They refused. Walking away was our only option. But the civilians, the innocent people on those worlds, they'll suffer. Yes, Lisa agreed. But that's not our fault. Their governments chose this. Their council representatives voted against us. We can't protect people whose leaders treat us with contempt. The last human ship entered Sol's system 3 days later. The withdrawal was complete. Humanity had come home, bringing their technology, their expertise, and their protection with them. The galaxy was on its own now. 3 weeks had passed since humanity's withdrawal, and the galaxy was already falling apart. High Counselor Zexthar stood in the council chamber, his crystalline body flickering with colors that indicated stress. Before him, the remaining council members argued in dozens of languages, their voices creating chaos even through the translation systems. Order, Zexthar called out, amplifying his voice. We must have order. The noise gradually died down. Zexthar looked at the attendance display and felt something like dismay. 30% of the seats were empty. Those species had stopped sending representatives, deciding the council wasn't worth their time anymore. The security report, Zexthar said, gesturing to the military coordinator. Commander Velron of the Mazar Collective stood. His species looked vaguely humanoid with blue-gray skin and large black eyes. Unlike many council members, Velron had always respected humanity. The situation is critical, Velron said bluntly. In 3 weeks, we have recorded 17 border incursions, 43 attacks on trade routes, and 12 diplomatic disputes that escalated to armed conflict. The Peltharian delegate rose from his seat. The raiders have attacked 6 of our colonies. We've lost 2 mining stations and a research facility. Hundreds of my people are dead. The Kethran trade stations are in chaos, another delegate added. Without human peacekeepers, old disputes have turned violent. Trade has dropped by 60%. A Vexorian representative floating in its containment sphere spoke up. Our science colonies are defenseless. We've had to evacuate 3 facilities. Years of research have been lost. Zexthar listened to the complaints pile up. Every species had the same story. Without human protection, the galaxy's stability had collapsed. Pirates operated freely. Border disputes turned into wars. Trade networks broke down. We must bring the humans back, said Ambassador Kira Mills of the Solix delegation. Her species glowed with soft bioluminescence, and right now that glow flickered with distress. They maintained peace throughout the outer reaches for decades. We never built our own defenses because we assumed they would always be there. They should have warned us this would happen, the Peltharian delegate protested. Velron's laugh was harsh and bitter. They did warn us repeatedly for years. We ignored them. We dismissed their concerns. We denied their request for equal rights while expecting them to die for us. They were paid for their services, Zexthar said, though his tone lacked conviction. Paid? Velron said. They lost thousands of soldiers protecting our space. They built defense stations at their own expense. They mediated our conflicts for free, and we paid them with restrictions and insults. Now we're learning what their service was actually worth. The chamber fell silent. The truth was becoming impossible to deny. Humanity hadn't just been another council member. They had been the foundation that held the alliance together. Without them, the whole structure was collapsing. On Pelthera Prime, Governor Rixtal watched another supply shipment get attacked just outside orbital range. The council had sent a protection force, but it was pathetic compared to what the humans had provided. 3 different species ships, each with different weapons and tactics trying to coordinate through translation delays. They had failed to stop 5 out of the last 6 raids. We could have prevented this, his aide said quietly, watching the supply ship burn. We did prevent it, Rixtel replied. For 30 years. The humans prevented it. We just didn't notice because it seemed so effortless for them. His aide pulled up statistics on a tablet. Crime rates in our sector have increased 400% in 3 weeks. Pirate activity is up 600%. Our economy is projected to collapse within 6 months. Have we contacted Earth directly? Rixtel asked, 3 times. They refuse all communications. President Carter issued a statement that humanity will not negotiate with any council member species for 5 years. 5 years. Rixtel wondered if his government would survive 5 months. On Kethrin Station, chaos had become the new normal. Captain Sophie Grant had predicted this, but seeing the report still made her sad. 4 people had been killed in merchant disputes. Theft was rampant. Several species had stopped bringing their goods to the station because they didn't feel safe. The Kethrin government had tried to establish its own peacekeeping force, but it was a disaster. The Kethrin peacekeepers were biased toward their own species. Other species refused to recognize their authority. Every attempt to restore order just led to more fights. Meanwhile, on Earth, life continued peacefully. President Daniel Carter met with his cabinet to review the situation across the galaxy. Secretary of Defense Karen Phillips displayed a map showing conflict zones in former council space. It's worse than we projected, Karen admitted. The Kethrin-Vexorian border dispute has exploded into a full war. Both sides are demanding we intervene to mediate. Our response? Daniel asked. We declined. We're not council peacekeepers anymore. The Peltharian government is offering us exclusive trade rights for their rare minerals if we'll defend just 3 of their colonies. They're offering 10 times what we were getting through council tribute. Daniel shook his head. Refuse. We're not mercenaries for hire. They need to learn to defend themselves. Secretary of State Linda Foster spoke up. The Mazar Collective has sent a different kind of message. They're proposing withdrawal from the council. They want to establish direct diplomatic relations with Earth, independent of the council structure. That got Daniel's attention. The Mazar are leaving the council? Councillor Velron is leading the movement. He's arguing that the council is broken and cannot be reformed. He wants to build something new, starting with a bilateral agreement with us. What are they offering? True equality, mutual defense pact, open trade, cultural exchange. Everything the council refused to give us. Daniel considered this carefully. The Mazar Collective was one of the few council species that had always treated humanity with respect. Velron had been one of the few voices speaking in favor of human rights. Tell them we're interested, Daniel said, but make it clear we won't join anything that resembles the old council structure. If they want our partnership, it has to be based on genuine equality. Back at the Galactic Council, the situation grew worse every day. 2 more species announced their withdrawal. The Solix delegation walked out after the council refused their request for emergency military aid. The Benthari left because they realized the council had no power to enforce trade agreements anymore. Zexathar watched the council he had led for decades crumble around him. The humans had been right. The council had taken them for granted. They had used humanity's strength while denying them respect. We must offer them full membership, Velron said during an emergency session. Unrestricted military rights, equal voting power, reduced tribute. Give them everything they asked for. That would make them more powerful than most council species, a delegate objected. They already are more powerful. Velron shot back. We just pretended they weren't because it made us feel superior. Look at what happened when they left. We collapsed in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. That tells you how much we depended on them. We cannot appear weak, Zexthar said, though he knew it was a losing argument. Weak? Velron laughed. Look around, High Counselor. We are weak. The humans were our strength. They were the muscle that protected us. The diplomats who kept the peace. The engineers who built our defenses. And we treated them like servants. The vote on offering humanity full membership passed, but it was too little, too late. When the offer was transmitted to Earth, the response was brief and cold. Humanity declines the Galactic Council's offer. We will reassess our relationship with the Council in 5 years. Until then, we have no interest in negotiations. Commander Lisa Hayes, now retired from active military service, had taken a position teaching strategy at the Earth Naval Academy. Her students were young and idealistic, fascinated by the stories of the withdrawal. Will we ever go back to the council? One student asked during a lecture. Lisa considered the question carefully. Perhaps, but not as subordinates. The galaxy needs to learn an important lesson. Peace is not natural. It doesn't just happen. It requires constant work, sacrifice, and respect. But people are dying, another student protested. Civilians who had nothing to do with the council's decisions. Yes, Lisa agreed. And that's tragic. But it's not our responsibility to protect people whose governments treat us with contempt. We gave the council 70 years of service. We asked only for equal rights. They refused. We had to draw a line somewhere. So we just watched the galaxy burn? No, Lisa said. We watched the galaxy learn. They're learning what real leadership looks like, and what sacrifice means, what it costs to maintain peace. The council got lazy because we did all the hard work. Now they're discovering how hard that work actually is. She pulled up a map showing the new political landscape. Several species had withdrawn from the council. Some were trying to build their own alliances. Others were attempting to negotiate with Earth directly. Something new is being built out there, Lisa said. Something that might be better than the council. But it can only be built by people who understand the value of what was lost. The council took us for granted. The next alliance, whatever form it takes, won't make that mistake. 6 months had passed since humanity's withdrawal, and the galaxy barely resembled its former self. The Catherine-Vexorian War had expanded beyond anyone's predictions. What started as a border dispute now involved 5 different species. Refugee ships fled from combat zones, overcrowding stations that could barely support their own populations. The death toll had reached 3 million and continued climbing every day. President Daniel Carter stood in the Situation Room deep beneath the White House, watching reports from across the galaxy. Secretary of State Linda Foster stood beside him, her expression grim. The Mazar Collective officially withdrew from the Galactic Council yesterday, Linda reported. That brings the total to 7 species who have left. The Council now controls less than 40% of its former territory. What's the Mazar leadership saying? Daniel asked. Councillor Velron is requesting a formal meeting with you. Not as a council representative, but as an independent head of state. He wants to discuss a mutual defense treaty. Daniel nodded slowly. Set it up. The Mazar always treated us with respect. I'm willing to talk. 3 other species have made similar requests. The Benthari, the Solix, and the Corlix. All of them withdrew from the council. All of them want direct agreements with Earth. What about the species still in the council? Linda pulled up another display. They're struggling. The Peltharians have lost control of their outer colonies. The Vexorians are fighting a war they can't win. The Catherine economy has collapsed. Even the species that aren't directly involved are suffering. Trade is down 70% across the galaxy. Piracy is at levels not seen in 200 years. And they still think we should come back and fix it for them, Daniel said, a trace of bitterness in his voice. Actually, the tone has changed. The latest messages aren't demanding. They're begging. High Counselor Zexthar sent a personal message yesterday. He's offering full council membership with unrestricted rights, equal voting power. No tribute payments, everything we asked for. Too late, Daniel said. We're not interested in propping up a dying system. On Pelthera Prime, the situation had gone from bad to catastrophic. Governor Rixtal sat in his office reading casualty reports from another raider attack. 200 civilians dead. A colony ship destroyed before it could escape. The raiders were getting bolder, attacking closer to the homeworld. His military advisor, a veteran named Kexral, stood before his desk. We cannot defend ourselves, Kexral said bluntly. Our military was designed to support human operations, not replace them. We have the ships, but not the training. We have the weapons, but not the tactics. What about the Council's protection force? Rixtal asked, though he already knew the answer. Useless. 3 different species trying to coordinate through translation delays. Last week they shot at each other by mistake. The raiders are laughing at us. Rixtal looked at the star map on his wall. For 30 years that map had shown a peaceful sector, protected by human defense grids. Now it was covered in red warning symbols. Pirate activity, raider bases, conflict zones. The Council failed us, Rixtal said quietly. Our representatives voted against humanity because they were arrogant. They assumed humans would always be there, no matter how badly we treated them. Some of us argued for supporting human rights, Kexral reminded him. Not enough of us, and now we're paying the price. On Kethrin Station, the chaos had settled into a kind of grim stability. Not because order had been restored, but because everyone had accepted that there was no order anymore. Merchants hired private security. Gangs controlled different sections. Species clustered in their own districts, afraid to venture into areas controlled by others. The station's administrator, a Kethrin named Trelvis, walked through the central marketplace with armed guards. She remembered when human peacekeepers used to patrol here alone, unarmed, and everyone felt safe. Those days seemed like a distant dream now. A human merchant ship had docked that morning. Just a small trading vessel, the first human ship to visit the station since the withdrawal. Word spread quickly, and soon a crowd gathered at the dock, hoping to plead for the humans to stay, to bring back the peacekeepers, to restore order. But the human captain, a woman named Beth Carter, made it clear she was only there to trade. She bought some goods, sold some others, and prepared to leave. Trelvis approached her at the dock. "Please," she said, "you can see the chaos here. We need human peacekeepers. We'll pay anything." Beth looked around at the damaged station, the nervous crowds, the gang members watching from the shadows. "You had human peacekeepers. You didn't value them. Now you'll have to figure out your own solution. But we can't. We don't know how. Then you'll learn, just like we learned. Humanity wasn't always united and peaceful. We had wars, crimes, chaos. We figured it out. So can you. How long did it take you?" Beth smiled sadly. "Centuries. But you have an advantage. You've seen how it can work. You know what peace looks like. You just have to decide you want it badly enough to do the hard work." She boarded her ship and departed, leaving Trelva staring at the empty dock. Back on Earth, the meeting between President Carter and Councillor Velron took place in Geneva, in a neutral conference center. It was a historic moment, the first diplomatic meeting between Earth and a former council species outside the council structure. Velron arrived with a small delegation. The Mazar leader looked tired, his blue-gray skin darker than usual, his large eyes showing strain. "Thank you for meeting with me," Velron said as they sat down. "You were one of the few council members who treated us with respect," Daniel replied. "I remember your speeches supporting human rights. I voted for your proposals every time, but I was outvoted. I apologize for not fighting harder. You're not responsible for the council's mistakes." Velron leaned forward. "The council is dying. 7 species have withdrawn, and more are considering it. The remaining members are too weak and too divided to maintain order. The structure is collapsing." "We noticed," Daniel said dryly. "My people want to propose something new. Not a council where species pretend to be equal while some are clearly subordinate. Not a hierarchical system where ancient species rule over younger ones. We want to build an alliance based on genuine equality." "Go on," Daniel said, interested despite himself. "The Benthari and Solix are interested in joining us. We've had preliminary talks with the Corlix. Together with humanity, we could form the core of a new alliance, one where every member has an equal vote, where military service is voluntary, not demanded, where respect is given freely, not grudgingly." Secretary of State Linda Foster spoke up. "What about the other council species? The ones who voted against us?" "They can join if they accept the new terms," Velron said. "But only if they genuinely commit to equality. No more pretending that age grants authority. No more restrictions on defensive rights. No more tribute systems." Daniel considered this carefully. "What would you call this new alliance?" "We were thinking the Concordat of Free Worlds. Free meaning genuinely independent, genuinely equal. No species above another. And humanity would be a founding member. We would be honored to have you. But I understand if you prefer to remain independent. Earth has every right to walk away from galactic politics entirely." Daniel looked at his advisors. They had discussed this possibility many times. Humanity could isolate itself, focus on its own development, and let the galaxy figure itself out. But they could also help build something better than the Council had been. "We're interested," Daniel said finally. "But we need to see details. Governance structure, military obligations, trade agreements. Everything needs to be clear from the start." Velron's face showed relief. "Of course. We'll provide detailed proposals. But I want you to know this isn't about us trying to manipulate humanity into protecting us again. This is about building a genuine partnership." "We'll see," Daniel said. "Actions matter more than words. The Council made a lot of promises it never kept. We're not the Council," Velron said firmly. "We learned from their mistakes. We watch them take humanity for granted and lose everything. We won't make that error. Over the following weeks, diplomatic teams from Earth, the Mazar Collective, Benthari, and Solix met repeatedly. They hammered out the framework for the Concordat of Free Worlds. Every species would have equal voting rights. Military cooperation would be voluntary. No tribute or taxes, only contributions to shared projects that benefited everyone. Disputes would be mediated by rotating panels of judges from all member species. It was slow work, but it was genuine work. These species were building something based on respect and equality, not convenience and exploitation. Meanwhile, the old Galactic Council continued to deteriorate. High Counselor Zexthar presided over an increasingly empty chamber. More species withdrew every month. Those who remained did so out of habit or fear of isolation, not because they believed in the Council anymore. Zexthar received reports of the new Concordat being formed, and he understood what it meant. The galaxy was reorganizing around humanity, not the Council. The species that had always respected human contributions were building something new. The Council's rejection of humanity hadn't just lost them a valuable member. It had triggered the birth of a rival alliance. "We made a terrible mistake," Zexthar said to his aide one evening, his crystalline form dim with fatigue. "We can still offer concessions," the aide 2 years after humanity's withdrawal. The galaxy had been transformed completely. Ambassador Kyle Morrison stood on the observation deck of Concordat Station, watching ships arrive from a dozen different worlds. This station, built jointly by humans, Mazar, Benthari, Solix, and 6 other species, represented everything the Galactic Council had refused to be. Here all species truly were equal. His assistant, Lieutenant Sophie Grant, stood beside him with a tablet displaying the summit schedule. 14 species will be attending the Concordat's 2nd annual summit, she said. 4 more have applied for membership and are here as observers. Any from the old council? Kyle asked. 3. The Peltharians, the Corlix, and surprisingly, the Vexorians. They've all formally withdrawn from the council and are applying to join the Concordat. Kyle smiled slightly. The Peltharians had been some of the most vocal opponents of human rights in the old council. Now they were begging to join humanity's new alliance. The irony was not lost on him. "The council delegation is here too," Sophie continued. "High Counselor Zexthar himself. He's requesting a meeting with you." "Official or unofficial?" "He says personal. He wants to talk, not negotiate." Kyle considered this. "Set it up. I'm curious what he has to say." The meeting took place in a small conference room, just Kyle and Zexthar. The crystalline being looked dimmer than Kyle remembered, his light refracted in duller patterns. 2 years had not been kind to him. "Thank you for seeing me," Zexthar said, settling into a specially designed chair. "I know you have no obligation to meet with council representatives. You asked for a personal meeting. I'm here as a courtesy, not as diplomacy." Zexthar made a gesture that Kyle's translator interpreted as resigned acceptance. "I came to apologize. Personally, not officially. The council's rejection of your species was the greatest mistake of my tenure. I voted against your petition and I was wrong." Kyle hadn't expected that. "Go on. I believed humanity was too young, too aggressive. I thought you needed to be controlled and restricted for the galaxy's safety. I was projecting my own species' history onto yours. The crystalline spent centuries being exploited by older species. When we finally gained power in the council, we used it to keep younger species subordinate. We told ourselves it was for their own good. But it was really about maintaining your position," Kyle said. "Yes. And when humanity withdrew, everything we had built collapsed. Not because you sabotaged us, but because we had become dependent on you. Your peacekeepers, your engineers, your diplomats, your soldiers. You held the galaxy together and we never acknowledged it." "Why are you telling me this?" Zexthar's light flickered. "Because I am dying. My kind does not have long lifespans once our light begins to fade. Before I expire, I wanted someone to know that I understood my mistake. The council I led for 40 years is extinct in all but name. 3 species remain as members. Everyone else has either joined your Concordat or isolated themselves." Kyle felt an unexpected sympathy. The Concordat might still accept the remaining council species. If they're willing to accept genuine equality, they won't. The species that remain in the council are the ones most invested in hierarchical power structures. They would rather die as rulers of nothing than live as equals in something meaningful. Sexthar stood to leave, then paused. I watched your summit preparations. This concordat you have built, it's what the council should have been. Every species contributing according to their abilities. Every species receiving according to their needs. No subordination. No exploitation. We learned from the council's mistakes, Kyle said. We know what doesn't work. After Zexithar left, Kyle stood alone in the conference room thinking about how much had changed. 2 years ago, he had walked out of the council chamber in frustration and anger. Now he was helping to lead an alliance that represented most of the civilized galaxy. The summit itself was everything Kyle had hoped for. Representatives from 14 member species gathered in the main chamber, and the contrast with the old council was stark. The room was designed so every delegation sat at the same level. There were no elevated platforms, no positions of honor. The Concordat's charter was simple. All members were equal. President Daniel Carter gave the opening address via hologram from Earth. 2 years ago, humanity withdrew from the Galactic Council because we were denied the basic respect that all sapient species deserve. We didn't want power over others. We wanted partnership with them. His image looked across the assembled delegates. The Concordat of Free Worlds represents a new approach to galactic civilization. We don't demand tribute. We don't restrict defensive rights. We don't treat younger species as subordinates. Every member contributes what they can and receives what they need. This isn't easy, Daniel continued. Equality requires constant work. It means listening to species you might disagree with. It means compromising and finding solutions that work for everyone. But it's worth it. In 2 years, Concordat space has seen 0 military conflicts between member species. Trade has increased 300%. Scientific cooperation has led to breakthroughs that benefit all of us. The delegates applauded. Not the polite acknowledgement of the old council, but genuine appreciation. After the opening ceremonies, Kyle met with the Peltharian delegation. Their leader was young, not Governor Rixtel, but his successor. Her name was Vexaria, and she looked nervous. Ambassador Morrison, we formally apply for membership in the Concordat, Vexaria said, presenting the official documents. Your application will be reviewed like any other, Kyle replied. But I have to ask, your species was one of the most opposed to human equality in the council. What changed? Vexaria's scales flushed with embarrassment colors. We learned the hard way. After you withdrew, raiders destroyed 6 of our colonies. We lost thousands of people. Our economy collapsed. Our military couldn't defend us because we had designed it to support yours, not replace it. I remember warning the council about that, Kyle said quietly. You did. We didn't listen. We thought we were superior because our species was older. We learned that age means nothing compared to capability and dedication. What about the other Peltharians? The ones who voted against us? Most have left politics. They're viewed as failures who nearly destroyed our species. The new generation wants something different. We want to be partners, not rulers. Kyle reviewed their application carefully. The Concordat has strict requirements. Genuine equality means treating humans the same as you treat your own kind. No special restrictions, no condescension. We understand. We're ready to meet those requirements. Then your application will go to the full membership for a vote. Fair warning. Several member species suffered because of Peltharian decisions in the old council. You may face some resistance. We accept that. We'll prove ourselves through actions, not words. Commander Lisa Hayes, now teaching at the Naval Academy, used the Concordat Summit as a teaching opportunity. She brought her advanced strategy class to watch the proceedings via live feed. What you're seeing is the result of standing up for your principles, she told her students. 2 years ago, walking away from the council seemed like failure. Now we can see it was the first step toward something better. One student raised her hand. But people died in those 2 years. The Peltharians lost thousands. The Kethran-Vexorian War killed millions. Was it worth it? Lisa had thought about this question many times. That's the wrong question. The right question is, whose responsibility were those deaths? We spent 70 years protecting the galaxy while being treated as subordinates. We asked for equality and were refused. The deaths that followed weren't caused by us leaving. They were caused by the Council's refusal to build sustainable systems. But we could have prevented them, another student protested. At what cost? Lisa asked. Should we have stayed forever, accepting discrimination just to protect people whose governments treated us with contempt? That's not peace. That's being held hostage. Real peace requires mutual respect. She gestured at the screen showing the summit. Look at what was built from those hard lessons. The Concordat has more members than the Council ever did. It's more stable. It's more equal. Sometimes the old has to break completely before something better can be built. Back at Concordat Station, the summit continued for 3 days. Member species presented proposals for joint defense initiatives, scientific research programs, and cultural exchanges. Every proposal was voted on equally. Humanity's vote counted the same as the Bentharies or the Solix's or any other member. On the final day, Kyle stood before the assembled delegates to announce the membership vote results. The Concordat has reviewed applications from 4 species seeking membership. After careful consideration and debate, I am pleased to announce that all 4 applications have been accepted. The Peltharian delegation looked relieved. The Corlix and Vexorian delegations celebrated openly. The Concordat was growing, not through conquest or coercion, but through genuine appeal. However, Kyle continued, membership comes with responsibilities. Every member species must contribute to collective defense. Every member must respect the rights of all others. Every member must accept binding arbitration for disputes. This is not a hierarchy where strong